webinar, and also happy Community Foundations Week. It's so nice to be here with you. I'm Laura Kalwinski, the Director of National Standards, and we're thrilled to be talking about what's new with the program with you today. You see our housekeeping slide up right now, and we just want you to know how to access help throughout the webinar, so please go ahead and give that slide a quick read and be available. Go ahead and check that out now, because this slide won't be available once we start the webinar in just 1 minute. I wanted to make sure that you all know that the National Standards has worked on revising its website to reflect the updates to the program that you're going to be hearing about today. And so please give our website a look. It'll continue to improve and to have new information coming through the new year, but we did want to get information onto the website and make sure that you know about the program changes that you're hearing today. In addition, if there's anyone from your team who's interested in having a copy of this webinar or listening to this webinar later, we are doing our best to make sure that we're recording now. I can see that it's recording, and we will try to make this recording public to you all as soon as possible. So look for that on the website. And with that, we're going to get started with what's new with the National Standards Program. I'm going to turn the mic over to Randy Royster. He is the President of the National Standards Board and also the President and CEO of the Albuquerque Community Foundation. Randy, how are you this morning, or this afternoon?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Laura. And good afternoon to all of you on the line. And thank you for joining us to discuss what's new with National Standards. I'm also joined today by my fellow Community Foundation National Standards Board directors, including our Treasurer, Hazel Hamilton, from the Community Foundation of Central Georgia, and then our Process Revisions Committee Chair, Eileen Ellsworth, and she's from the Community Foundation of Northern Virginia, and then finally Janice Black from the Foundation for Enhancing Communities. And you're going to hear a little bit from each of them a little bit later in our webinar. While you'll hear from a few National Standard Board members today, we want you to know that the revisions of the National Standards was truly a team effort that demonstrated Community Foundation leadership. The Standards Action Team, which is led by Judy Shostat, took on the really Herculean task of revising the National Standards. And then those revisions were passed on to the Standards Board, which we represent, so that they could simplify the application process itself. This program is for community foundations and from community foundations, and I hope that by the end of this presentation you'll have a good sense of that being built into the presentation. We built this program for you, we revise it with you, and we look to you to help us keep making it better and perhaps even to serve with us on the board. So if this is something of interest for you, we're actually in the process of recruiting potential new members for the National Standards Board, and you could certainly forward names, your own or those of others, to Laura or to any one of us that are represented on this call today from the board. We may all know why the national standards are valuable and what they are, but I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about this so that we are all on the same page as we move forward through this presentation. The National Standards for U.S. Community Foundations is an accreditation program that promotes operational effectiveness to foster excellence in community philanthropy. And we do this in two ways. One, we create standards for operationally and legally sound community foundations. And this we includes the Community Foundations Field, the Council on Foundations Community Foundation Leaders, and the National Standards Board. And then secondly, we lead community foundation staff and boards through the process of achieving operational excellence. Now in this case, the we includes the National Standards Board and committees, the National Standards Director, which is Laura, and then peer and legal reviewers. With confidence in their operations, community foundations really can innovate and take risks that are necessary to solve the complex social problems in their individual communities. I have to admit that that really resonates with me. We all work with our board, the community, and numerous partners, and sometimes it can be difficult to try something new or to take a risk in our communities. And I found that reminding our stakeholders that we can take these risks because the organization is built on a solid foundation and regularly checked with national standards, we truly do then have the confidence to serve our community in innovative and meaningful ways. I've introduced to you some of our board members, but I want to take a minute to talk about the role of the National Standards Board. Our role is to carry out and advance the national standards by ensuring the integrity of the process and building the value of national standards for the Community Foundation field and greater community. I think now we'd like to dig into the national standards history a bit, and I'm going to ask our director, Janice Black, who is also one of the founding leaders of the national standards, to walk us through this. Janice?
Thank you, Randy. The national standards certainly didn't start with the board. It started with people like you and me talking to one another. I'd like to take a few minutes to reminisce with you, to think about where we've been before we talk about where we are going. I can tell you that when we started this, we knew that we had to do something before the government decided to monitor us. So we decided in those many conversations at the council to start thinking about what were minimal standards and how could we go about monitoring ourselves to prove that we are excellent in what we provide. In the late 1980s, the Community Foundation field experienced exponential growth as donor-advised funds became a popular giving tool. Community foundations were new to many communities, and any foundation can put the words community and foundation together in their name without necessarily being what we all know as a community foundation. As a field, we recognized it was important for our communities, our donors, and our policymakers to understand who we are and what we do. So I'd like to take a moment to celebrate who we are with you. Community foundations are remarkable, as we all know. Frederick Goff inspired us, and we continue to promote a fundamental philosophy. Communities that pool their funds and make decisions about how to invest those funds into the community will not just be resilient communities, they will be thriving communities. Because we, as members of our community, understand that successful community building must be directed by residents with a collective understanding of community needs. Very important. Community investments should not be dictated to us, but rather executed in the manner that we, the members of the community, deem appropriate. So with this tremendous inspiration behind us, Community Foundation leaders came together in the 1990s and formed a Community Foundation leadership team within the Council on Foundations to organize the creation of an accreditation program. And I might add here that we were very, very happy that the Council was willing to work with us on this important work. In the early 2000s, the National Standards for United States Community Foundations was adopted by the Community Foundation leadership team, and at the annual conference, like the one we were at recently, our colleagues came together to discuss the program administration, resulting in the creation of the Standards Action Team. Our early work was recognized and funded by the C.S. Mott Foundation and the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. A few short years later, community foundations declared their intent to participate in the program, and peer reviewers volunteered to assist the Standards Action Team with review of the submissions. After nearly a decade of thinking and planning and implementing, community foundations began receiving accreditation in 2005. That was a big day. The build-up to the first round of submissions had a lot of momentum and support. At the same time, community foundations leaders, me included, couldn't help but wonder if the process seemed a lot like work, like a lot of work to be specific. It was really good stuff, but it was hard work. And however, we all felt it was worth it because we knew it would be easier with reconfirmation. And then the Pension Protection Act passed. Now please don't misunderstand my slide. I don't hate the Pension Protection Act, but I will admit it's one that gives us a little trepidation. We work with the Council to ask for regulatory guidance year after year and still tend to feel like we are operating in a vast gray area. So when we get specific guidance and rules, it can be helpful. That said, implementing the Pension Protection Act was part of the many first and second submissions to national standards, and we really felt it. There were substantial changes we had to make, and I know my foundation was grateful to have the national standards guidance on the implementation of the law, but it was still a heavy lift by staff to make all those changes. I'm sure you'll all agree with me. Well, we at Community Foundations weren't the only ones who felt the weight of national standards. So did all of our volunteer administrators and reviewers. So by the end of the decade, the Community Foundation leadership team, the Standards Action Team, and the Council on Foundation discussed how to provide the program with administrative support. These conversations resulted in the creation of the Community Foundation National Standards Board, a Type 1 supporting organization of the Council on Foundations. This change in structure and administration coincided with the 5-year revisions process that was implemented in 2010. What a decade that was. Today we're again talking about national standards revisions. In 2013, the Standards Action Team, made up of our colleagues and chaired by Judy Shostet, spent a year working together to revise the national standards based on input from the field. Their work resulted in removing redundancies from the national standards and adding standards to address the evolution of our work, such as how we should use social media. The Community Foundation National Standards Board then created a committee to build on their work to not only improve the standards themselves, but the process of submission, accreditation, and re-accreditation. In a few minutes, we will share what we heard from you and our colleagues during the process and how we responded. But before that, I will turn this mic back to Randy to discuss who participates in national standards and why. Randy?
Thanks, Janice. I don't know if those of you on the line realize this, but about 66% of all U.S. community foundations are currently accredited with the national standards. That is just a little under 500 of the approximately 750 community foundations that we have in the states. Some of you might be wondering, well, why not 100%? And as you know, the national standards are rigorous, and we will work with community foundations through the process, but some decide to wait to participate. Some decide that the process costs outweigh the benefits, and some that aren't represented have contacted us and are already ready to join next year, especially with the good news that we're sharing with you today. We often get the question about whether community foundations of various sizes see the value of national standards. What I'd like you to know is 94% of the 25 largest community foundations participate in national standards. And 150 of the currently 496 accredited community foundations have assets of less than $10 million. And so, you know, the program really does service community foundations of all size. The community foundation that I represent, the Albuquerque Community Foundation, while it's one of two of the largest in our state of New Mexico, it still falls into the category of a small-size community foundation. Nonetheless, I know how valuable this tool is for our staff and our board. And I'd like to now share with you some of the value that I see in the National Standards Program. The National Standards Program started by saying it was the good housekeeping seal of approval for community foundations. I'm sure many of you have used that term, as I have. And in a way, it is true, but it is so much more. Community foundations that receive and attain accreditation follow a roadmap for establishing, implementing, and maintaining legal, ethical, and effective practices that withstand the scrutiny of our donors, government at all different levels, and media. We've had many community foundation CEOs report back to us that when they undergo an IRS audit, which we wouldn't wish on any of us, that they receive negative public comment, or that they are recognizing policy members are questioning the value of their work, and that their reports are consistent. They all tell us that going through national standards, having all of their governing documents and policies in one place and checked by reviewers, gives them the confidence as they weather that scrutiny of their work by any of those groups. This tells me that national standards help Community Foundation board and staff sleep better at night, knowing that they have confidence in their operations. National standards is more than a good night's sleep, however. Whether your community foundation is in the process of accreditation or it is in between accreditation submissions, you can use the National Standards website resources and contact the National Standards Director for guidance on how changes to your policies would affect your accreditation status. But you don't have to fight legal battles alone. The Council on Foundations policy team meets with federal and state policy members to educate them on the national standards and explain that community foundations voluntarily self-regulate their operation. Their work reminds policymakers of our value to the community and preserves the tools that we need to engage with donors, nonprofits, and our communities at large. The entire process is designed for you to be able to engage your board and your staff in ongoing training of legal compliance and organizational management. In fact, our most frequent comment about the accreditation program is, and I will quote, "Just wanted to let you know that while the process was labor intensive," and I think you would all, that if you've been through this, we would all agree on that, "we found it to be a good learning experience for our board and staff. We follow most of the procedures on a frequent basis, but some are not as common. Therefore, we refreshed our knowledge and taught new staff as we worked through the accreditation process." That is exactly what happened to me. 9 years ago, I came into this field as a lawyer and business professional, knew nothing of what I was doing, and our community foundation had already signed an agreement to go through national standards that never happened, and so I decided to take that on personally to teach myself our business. Finally, you know, there's something satisfying about being able to display the National Standards logo on our website and our communication materials, and also to know that GuideStar displays our accreditation on our Foundations page. The national standards are valuable to our foundations individually, but they are also valuable collectively, and that's becoming more and more important as the days go by. National Standards accredited community foundations receive bonus points for the HUD Secretary's Award for Public-Private Partnership, and if you happen to attend this year's annual conference, you saw those award winners. In addition, there's 3 states currently, Iowa, Kentucky, and Maryland, which recognize the national standards with tax credit legislation for donations to accredited community foundations. Ohio has legislation that's passed the House and is likely to pass the Senate in a lame duck session. And Indiana and several other states are working on similar legislation. Interestingly, California law permits accredited community foundations to be eligible managers of land trust endowments. Now, I know that these may seem like only a few pieces of a big puzzle, but I have to take a moment to share with you what it is like to know that national standards is really on the policy map. As many of you know, recent tax reform proposals are questioning endowed philanthropy generally and donor-advised funds specifically. And these issues are near and dear to every single one of us on this call, every single one of us in this field. And the National Standards Board, with the Council of Foundations, is watching these issues closely for you and talking about our self-regulatory efforts. In fact, Sue Santa, who's the Council's Vice President of Public Policy and Legal Affairs, arranged a face-to-face meeting between our National Standards Board and staff from the Joint Committee on Taxation and Ways and Means Committee at the Council's annual conference in June in Washington, D.C. I was there, my colleagues on the phone were there, and what we saw was that these representatives wanted to know that the National Standards Board had real people behind it, and that we were representative of a broad spectrum of community foundations, which we are. We talked to them about how the national standards provide review of our operations and give us the confidence to innovate and take the risks to solve complex community problems that, as every day go by, are less likely to be solved by government funding. And they were very impressed. They asked us to keep the dialogue open and to continue to provide them with updates about the national standards revisions. And I think my colleagues from the board that are on the phone and Laura would agree with me that really we went away from there thinking national standards may actually be the insurance policy to the crux of our business in terms of donor-advised funds and endowed philanthropy. Just 1 month later, NASCO, which is the National Association of State Charity Officials, reached out to us and asked us to engage in discussions with them about disaster philanthropy. They recognize our role in the community and want to understand how we self-regulate. And I'm really thrilled to share that these updates with you because 20 years ago, a group of our visionary leaders got together to create this program. 10 years ago, we put it into action, and now today we're here to talk and to celebrate the extent to which this program is recognized, respected, and lauded. And I hope that that really sinks in with you all today. Now that we've had a moment to talk about history, let's dig into the revisions. I'm very pleased to introduce you once again to my colleague and fellow board member, Eileen Ellsworth. And Eileen is going to talk about how we took this valuable, important program and revised it to significantly decrease the administrative burden on you and your staff. Eileen?
Thank you, Randy, and thank you to everyone who's joined us today. I am excited to celebrate the value of national standards with you all and, of course, share the actual process revisions that we've engaged in, and to also share with you why I was motivated to lead the National Standards Process Committee. First, I'd like to say thank you to Judy Shosted and the Standards Action Team. They did an absolutely amazing job refreshing and streamlining the national standards, and our committee simply wanted to carry on their work and really help clarify the process. So let me start by sharing my story with you. I'm the president of a small community foundation. So as that leader, I took on the responsibility of national standards accreditation for our organization in 2006 and for reaccreditation in 2011 myself. And let me tell you, it was tough. And of course, the process became even more complex after the Pension Protection Act was passed. And over that time, our peer reviewers got better and better at knowing what the regulators were looking for in policies and procedures. But over time, their understanding and the understanding of the field diverged. So here is a summary of the issues we addressed and tried to resolve in this new process. So first, we know that the directions and the cover sheets were sometimes vague. By working with Laura, I certainly recognized that the CF Standards website had a lot of information and answers, but when I was doing the accreditation and reaccreditation process for our organization, I just couldn't always find the information I needed, and if I found it, I couldn't necessarily figure out how to piece it all together. And I heard the same thing from many other organizations that were going through the process. Second, we recognized that what the reviewer knew past standards and what I knew to provide sometimes had a huge gap. So this resulted in rounds of submissions and comments going back and forth, and the whole process could become very, very frustrating. And third, we recognize that the process is cumbersome, to say the least. There were 35 cover sheets and 41 standards, which made absolutely no sense. All those binders, 6-inch binders, Laura was telling me there's sometimes 8-inch binders, dozens of emails. I mean, it was enough to make you just want to throw the book out the window. So finally, the amount of time became very difficult to justify. And yes, I thought accreditation was incredibly important for our organization. It was a great process for our staff to go through. It was a great process for our board to go through. It was a great training process, but it was just difficult. It was difficult on me, on the staff, and on the board, which means that at some point, it's just difficult. So with all of these challenges, you might wonder why I volunteered for the revisions committee. Well, I tell you it's because I saw where we could go, and I knew others did too. First, I knew that if we split the legal requirements from the operational excellence requirements in the process, it would be clear what we were trying to meet and when. So if you've ever questioned if something was a legal requirement that you would have to comply with, even if you weren't going through standards accreditation, and what was the operational excellence that we did to go above and beyond the baseline legal requirement, well, now that's going to be very, very clear because we broke the submission into 2 sections. First, we're going to ask that everyone submit their policies and procedures, and those are checked to ensure that they comply with the law. And then the second section is the 26 national standards and a set of questions about how your organization operationalizes each standard. So first the legal review, then the operational excellence review. And that this is going to clarify when you are fulfilling a baseline legal requirement or when you are fulfilling a requirement to demonstrate operational excellence. Next, you can say goodbye to 35 cover sheets and 41 national standards because now there are 26 national standards and 26 tabs. So it all makes sense. You can also say goodbye to your sets of 6 or 8-inch binders because now all of our submissions are going to be online, which is just incredibly wonderful. So the staff and board are no longer going to have to wonder what to write in each policy, okay? The Council on Foundations legal team has actually created an entire set of sample documents for each and every document that is required in the legal review section. In addition to the samples, there's also going to be a cover sheet giving helpful hints for drafting and revising your policies, including what is the legal requirement, what are some shared best practices regarding these policies, and what are common submission pitfalls that are found when the reviewers review the documents. And I'll tell you, there was a pretty good debate on our committee about whether to draft samples for the field, because some felt that they wanted organizations like ours to feel ownership of the policies and therefore draft them themselves. But I was a strong advocate in favor of having the legal team at the council provide those samples, and here's why. I simply felt that sometimes policies get passed and they may sit on our shelf for a while, and we may not need them every day. But on the day that we actually do need our policy, like our confidentiality policy or our new social media policy, it's great that we'll actually have a policy that's been vetted by the legal team at the Council on Foundations and that I know I can rely on because it passes national standards. Finally, look for the national standards team, the board, reviewers, and staff to increase their communications with the entire field as you're going through this process. We want you all to feel supported in the revisions process. So we are updating the website, we're offering webinars like this, and we're highlighting national standards in council communications, and just trying to break down the barriers in the entire process so that we don't just announce some improvements today, but we keep making improvements. We've got the ability to continue clarifying the accreditation process, and I really encourage all of you to be active in helping us do that. 2015 is going to be the first year for the online submissions process. We're calling it the beta year, and this means we need your feedback. During that entire year, we need your feedback. Even if your foundation isn't set to renew until 2016 or 2017, you can go on the new website, you can set up a profile, you can start uploading your information, and you can start communicating with us to help us understand your experience and to help us keep improving your experience with this online process. We know the process of complying with national standards is valuable, and now we've made it a lot less painful. So to continue our revisions discussion, I'd like to introduce the Community Foundation National Standards Board Treasurer, Hazel Hamilton. Hazel?
Thank you, Eileen, Randy, and Janice for digging into the history of national standards to show that we are a program that's worked to improve our content and value year after year. I hope you all see how serious we are about listening to your feedback and responding to you. While today is far from the end of our work for improvement, as Eileen said, it's a giant step forward for the program. In addition, there's another common issue that we wanted to address with national standards, and that's the cost of the program. In the past, the program had a one-time cost every 5 years. Many foundations asked that we looked into a way to help you budget the cost annually rather than every 5 years. You've heard that we've added a technology component and created samples for your use. With these improvements, National Standards is also implementing an easy-to-budget annual cost. For your next accreditation cycle, National Standards cost will be $1,250 for the first online submission and $1,000 each following year. Remember, while these revisions go into effect in 2015, your community foundation will start in this system with your next accreditation cycle. Therefore, for example, if you have accreditation until 2017 currently, you will submit using the revised program at that time. However, remember the online submission will be available to your community foundation beginning in January 2015 so that you can slowly begin storing your organization's vital documents in one place. All of that is at no cost to you until it's time for you to submit and hit that submit button. So now that you've heard about the revisions, we want to show you the most exciting component, the online submissions. Alex Fromm, a member of the team who has worked with us to deliver online submissions to you, is here to walk you through the new technology. Alex?
Thanks, Hazel. I'm here today to talk about the new National Standards Board certification application. The National Standards Board is moving from a paper and labor-intensive process to a fully online application and review process in the cloud. My team at WiseHive is supporting the National Standards Board in this initiative, and I'm ready to share the good news about the new application. So, the new process takes into account 3 types of users: applicants, reviewers, and administrators. Today we'll focus on the applicant and very minimally the reviewer. So what does the new application consist of? We have login instructions, the registration portion, legal uploads, 1 page dedicated to each of the 26 national standards, and general information about your organization that we need. Additional information regarding payment, and so forth. Okay. You'll first sign up. This is important because we'll define the email and password you will use to come back and access your application again. This is the menu landing page of how you access the application. You'll see the instructions page first as you open the application. All pages of the application can be accessed through clickable links at the top, as listed here in blue. You will then see a series of instructions regarding payment. This will be followed by a substantial series of document requests. I'm referring to documents necessary for the application, such as your foundation's bylaws or the articles of incorporation. This system will allow you to upload these documents. It will indicate the file types allowed to be uploaded. So to understand exactly what you should be submitting, you'll be able to download a sample document by either clicking on a link for that sample document from the application, or download the sample from the National Standards website. So next, we each have tabs accordingly, displaying information regarding each of the national standards. And then we move on to data collection. This is a section that will not affect your accreditation. They are intended to gain understanding of how the Community Foundation applicants operate. Okay. At the end of the application is a review portion. At any time, you can save your draft of your application, come back to it later if you'd like to log out, and once you return and are ready to submit, you click the Submit button at the bottom. Once you've submitted, you'll be reconfirming that with an additional screen, and that information will then be sent to National Standards. You always have the option to print, even if you log out and come back. As of now, we are not accepting payment through WiseHive, but we may do so in the future. You'll receive a confirmation email and will be asked to submit payment through those instructions. Okay. So to review for the applicant point of view, you'll be able to access the application via the National Standards Board website. You'll be able to log in and save a draft as frequently as you'd like. You can upload files and replace files simply by re-uploading in the same field. You will have access to sample templates. And in the first year of use, you will complete the entire application, regardless of whether you have applied and been accredited previously. However, all of the information that you submit will be available for reconfirmation for years thereafter. Remember that you'll receive email messages to confirm your submission when final comments are ready for your review and response, and when you are officially approved. Okay? Remember that your information is stored in the cloud. You can always log in and print a copy of your application. So this slide here is referring to the review process side. Everything is automated and in response to what the application is saying. This is an image of what the application review looks like. There are foundations that have been assigned to the Council on Foundations legal and peer reviewer. They will then open your application and click to add a review. This is what the review form looks like. They will mark which sections they believe need further review or additional information before accreditation. So a question that many applicants would say is, how does an applicant respond to comments? So what they would do is they log back in to the National Standards Board Certification application, the same URL that you would use previously. They then select the Application Response button, which I'll show you in the next image. They then review the comments that are presented in front of them. They enter their response and then submit. So this is that menu that I was referring to. Additional options now appeared because you are deemed ready to give a response to the comments from the Council on Foundations team. After response, you have the ability to be approved. So the application is approved, and you will receive an approval confirmation email. The email will include a link to a licensing agreement. The application is then moved to the reconfirmation area. The application is updated to note what has changed in the past year or any newly requested information based on standards changes. You must submit your reconfirmation application at least 90 days in advance of your approval anniversary. Okay? This is an example of what that email looks like when you are officially approved. Okay, so to review, we have discussed the application is now automated. You are putting in information at once or in a series of sessions when you log in. The information is always available online. The administrator, Laura, is always advised of the status of your application. You can update your application until you submit, but do not have access to the application answers, or to be able to change them, I should say, after you do this. You only have the ability to print after you submit. You have access to sample templates. Anyone can access the application 24/7. You do not pay until you submit your application. Instructions will follow your submission. This same system holds true for the reconfirmation application. Reviews will be performed more quickly, and you will have access to final comments about your application. So we are excited about this opportunity to support the National Standards Board, and we look forward to working with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Alex. This is Randy again. I hope that all of you on the line can tell that your National Standards Board volunteers are really excited for 2015 to be our beta year when we can learn from the field and continue fine-tuning the technology to best serve you. And so really quickly, just before we open the conversation for questions from all of you who've dialed in, you heard from Laura Kalwinski at the beginning of this webinar, and I want to make sure that you realize she is our Director of National Standards and also one of the attorneys on staff working with Sue Santa. She joined our team at National Standards a year ago, and before she actually took over as the director, she was working with Daria Tutanico, which some of you may have known, as staff support on the National Standards revisions, as well as now running the accreditation program. And as I say accreditation, I want to confirm something that came up in our presentations in the at the annual conference. People were asking us about confirmation versus accreditation. And we are all working real hard, even though you may have heard both terms today from us as we're sharing our thoughts with you. You may have heard both reconfirmation, confirmation, and accreditation and reaccreditation, but officially it is accreditation and reaccreditation. I hope you all realize, too, that our work has really come about in some part knowing that many of you have had frustrating experience in the submissions process. But we hope as you get ready for your reaccreditation, we hope that as those of you who've been contemplating this for a while and now with this great news may go ahead and decide to get on board with accreditation in 2015. We hope that you'll just continue to work with us, your National Standards Board. We are your board, and with Laura. We always want to know how we can serve you better and how we can continue to improve our program. And so now I'm happy to open up our discussion for anyone who may have questions, and I think, Laura, you'll explain to us how we do that from this point.
Thank you so much, Randy. We did have a few questions come in, and I'm excited to clarify them. Again, I'm Laura Kalwinski, the Director of National Standards. I am here today with Tim Huber, who helps assist on the program and has helped us with a lot of the National Standards website revisions. And also I'm here with Daria Tutanico. So if any of you have worked with her in the past, I wanted to make sure you know she's still here and we work together and we make sure the institutional knowledge of the program maintained. So Daria, if you want to say hi to everyone.
Hi, everyone. Great to have some interview on the webinar today.
Yes, so thank you, everyone, for your questions. We did purposely leave 15 minutes in our program to make sure that we could be responsive to you. So we're going to go ahead and answer some of your questions now. The first question is about the recording. We want you all to know our goal is to have the recording up on the Standards website within a week. We do go through and make sure that we compress it and do all the fancy technology terms of things that I'm not sure of, but there are some final processing of it that we do, but we want to get that up on the website as quickly as possible. Next, the question about, is accreditation still for 5 years? So currently, some of you are in a 5-year process, and for those who have open submissions with us right now, you're most likely going to have a 2014 license date of your accreditation. So your accreditation will run until 2019. If you were accredited in 2010, 10, it'll be 2015, 11, 2016, and so on. So those 5-year periods will hold. However, once you go into the online system for the first time and you hit the submit button and you start that process with us, your accreditation that you receive at the end of the process will be for 1 year. And that's partly because now we have you budgeting year over year, but we want you to know, don't gasp when I say 1 year. It's 1 year because each year we're doing a check-in with you to say, has anything changed? And at that time, we can see all of your old documents from your original online submission, and then you'll just give us updates if you and your board have made changes. It also gives us an opportunity to be responsive to the law. So your licensing agreement will be good for 1 year after that, but we don't want you to think of having a heavy load each year. It really is just sharing with us what's changed so that we can review those changes. Additionally, we've been asked about to clarify the cost of the program. Again, the first time you go into the program and you hit the submit button, right? So remember, you can be in the online system, you can be looking around, you can be filling in information. But once you hit the submit button and you would like us to review your documentation, then the cost is $1,250 at that time. Then each year when you tell us what's changed within your 1 year of accreditation, you'll also submit your payment of $1,000 at that time. So that's clarifying how the cost of the program will proceed moving forward. Another question we had was about the dates of accreditation. We know many of you started your 5-year accreditations in 1 year and sometimes received your licensing agreement in a following year. The licensing agreement date is the date of your accreditation, and trust me, when we talked about this at the Cleveland conference, since then I've probably fielded 50 to 75 requests for your accreditation date. If you have questions about that, I'm nervous to say this to the hundreds of you on the call, but please email submissions@cfstandards.org and I will respond to you with your accreditation dates. In addition, we are working to determine if the Community Foundation locator on the CF Standards website can list the end month and year of your accreditation so that that will be a quick, easily accessible information. Please note that with the online system, that should also be easy to determine by logging into the system, which is a benefit of that system. So those are a couple of the first questions we've had. I'm going to take a quick breath, and I'm going to give our board a chance to say anything that they might want to add, and then I'm going to continue with the questions. Okay. The next question is, will you still be contacting us to let us know when we are scheduled to submit? Great question. Yes. So the individual community foundation submitting in 2015 should have received an email from me several months ago over the summer. If you think your community foundation is up to submit in 2015, please contact me, but we will continue to send those emails. There won't be a statement of agreement because we're using the online system and we'll be able to see if you've gone in and you plan to work on the program. So you will just be submitting online, no more statements of agreement. Now, just remember, when we contact you, we will be contacting you ahead of your scheduled date because your accreditation date is the date we'd like to have your determination done, not the date that we want to receive your submission. So you want to give us several months to look at those materials and work with you to update those materials before your accreditation expires. Of course, we'll use the rule of reasonableness, but we do want to make sure we're working with you before the date of your accreditation on your resubmission, not on the date. So the next question is, what if it takes more than a year to gather and submit documents? How does the fee work? Again, what we said earlier is we want you to get your accreditation materials in 3 to 6 months before your accreditation expires, but we certainly understand that you'll need to be working on that information before that time. Part of the reason we've updated the website and provided all the sample documents and are offering the online portal to you at any time after January 2015 is because we want you to have the ability to get in there, you may not be due until 2017, but we want you to have the opportunity to get into the online portal, make your adjustments, start uploading documents, and so that if it's going to take you some time, I know some of you are in small shops. I came from a community foundation that was a small shop. We want you to have a lot of lead time, so we want to work with you. But the fee doesn't hit until you hit that submit button, and we request payment at that time. The next question is, must your community foundation be a member of the Council on Foundations to go through the process? It's an interesting question and one that we get a lot. The Community Foundation National Standards Program does not have a requirement for Council on Foundation membership to be part of the program. So it is a separate program, and you can apply whether or not you are a Council on Foundations member. That said, the Council on Foundations website may have additional resources for your community foundation that may help you with your policies and procedures that we may not have at the CF Standards website. Next question, will there be multiple logins for a foundation or just one? Great question, and actually, Alex, if you'd like to come off mute and answer that question, I'm going to take a breath and let you handle that one. Alex?
Sure. So logins, the question regarding multiple logins is that any application should have one login. So that email and password is associated with that specific application. So we would suggest using perhaps your information email or the standard email that you would associate with your community foundation, and then only giving the password out to people that would necessarily edit the application specifically.
Thank you, Alex. The next question I'm going to ask Hazel or Randy to field, and the question is, why is there a high price for an annual check-in? And I'm going to let Hazel start that because we did do extensive work with the Community Foundation National Standards Board to review the cost of the program.
That's right, Laura. This is Hazel. We took a real deep dive into the cost, and for many years from the start of the program, we have been receiving subsidy of our expenses from the Council on Foundations. We feel that it's really important for the Community Foundation's national standards to be able to stand on our own. That reflected an increase in cost. We've gone to the technology platform and added some other enhancements, and really feel that with this technology platform, it's giving you a platform you can use all year long. It's not necessarily a once-a-year check-in because you can access the samples at any time. You can also use it all year long. For example, if your board adopts a new policy, you don't have to wait till it's time for the check-in. You can be making sure that you are up to date on that platform at any time. So it's an effort to make our revenues match with our expenses and to be able to continue with a healthy program in the future.
And this is Randy. I would just add to that comments that we made this presentation twice live at the annual conference in Cleveland. And I would share with you that I had, of course, some folks come up and be concerned about, on a 5-year basis, it's a significant increase. But I think I had far more people come up to us, and interestingly enough, even a majority of smaller community foundations, and say that the way it's structured now and the additional services that have been applied to it, they felt like there really was value for that approximately $1,000 a year price. And as Hazel just said, we didn't come up with that price indiscriminately, but it's real cost for providing everything that we're now going to be providing, and for the standards to be self-supporting and not assuming that we have supplementation of this going forward. Of course, as we've already indicated multiple times on this call, we'd very much like to hear your individual thoughts as we go forward.
Great. Thank you, Randy and Hazel, and thank you for that opportunity to take a breath. We do have no shortage of questions, so this is exciting. We will try to be respectful of everyone's time and end at 4 o'clock, but we will follow up with people if we can't get to your questions. But I'll stop giving disclaimers and keep answering questions. Next one. Do you have to schedule a date for submission and review? Great question. That was true in the past. Now with the online system, we are trying to go on a rolling basis. So we are asking you to submit no later than 90 days before your accreditation expires, and hopefully up to 6 months if you have time, because all of you know review does take some time, and we're trying to shorten that off the time. But you don't have to schedule. Now that said, while you'll be giving us your submissions on a rolling basis, we will have reviewers in both doing rolling reviews of applications as they come in and then doing organized in-person reviews. And we think that both are important because we learn a lot from the peer and legal reviewers when they sit in a room together and they look at your books at one time. So please know, while you don't have to schedule dates, we're still going to be doing a variety of review to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the program and that we're learning about your organizations from the review process, and having that help us inform the process. Next question, does the reconfirmation process start when the current accreditation expires, or you do begin applying prior to the expiration date? Again, the expiration date is really what we're using to say we'd like to have your accreditation determined by your expiration date. I know in the past we try to use the rule of reasonableness. We know some of you are in small shops, and we know that that date is one that we have to work with sometimes. However, we don't want to get into a situation where you may be 6 or 7 years into the process, or in the new process, 2 or 3 years into your reconfirmation. Again, we're working very hard on our side to shorten the time it takes us to review and get back to you, and the online submission is actually going to help our workflows on that side as well. But we do want to be continually finding ways to streamline the time frame for your review and supplemental materials. So we are trying to have accreditation in place by the time of your expiration date. Next question, what happens if we apply and are denied? Can we apply again, and when, and do we have to pay again? Great question. There is a determinations and appeals process for the national standards. So as you've heard today, you give your first submission, and then we request additional documentation from your community foundation, and we work with you on pieces that you can resubmit to us if you are willing to do so. If we hit an impasse, then we do go to a determinations committee, a subcommittee of the board, to review the program or to review the submission and make a determination. From that point, there is also an appeals process. So we want you to know that if there is a denial, there's multiple steps to that process, and there is a way to continue talking to a community foundation whether your accreditation has lapsed or if you were denied at one time. So please contact us if you have further questions about that. A few more questions before we end. When can community foundations begin to submit? So the online portal will open in January of 2015, though the National Standards website at this time does reflect the new standards. So in January 2015, as soon as we open the portal, if some of you are ready to go, you're certainly welcome to submit as soon as that portal opens in January. And again, we'll be trying to put out information in the Council's Washington Snapshot, this week at the Council, through emails. We'll really try to make sure you know when the website's opened. Our webpage will certainly be blinking and telling you that. So January of 2015, the online portal opens, and we look forward to all of you getting in there, and if you want to submit, hitting that submit button. Final question, because we're just at 4 o'clock. If you're due in the first quarter of 2015, are you in trouble? Absolutely not. We understand that 2015 is a beta year. We've made a lot of changes. We've got a new online system. The technology is being wonderful. We try to break it with Alex and Claudia every day, and it resists because it's a very well-built program. But 2015 is a beta year, and we will work with all of you in 2015. Clearly, if you're due in 2015 in January, and we're opening the portal in January, we're certainly going to work with you on those expiration dates. So if you're due in 2015, be in touch with me. We'll work with you, and we really look forward to having you be one of the first organizations in. So we believe we've hit most of the questions. If we've missed some, we will be in touch with you. Again, we hope that this recording ran smoothly and that we'll have it up online in about a week. And please don't hesitate to contact us. My email is submissions@cfstandards.org. And cfstandards.org is our website. My direct line is 703-879-0672. You're also welcome to reach out to our board members. And if you're in Kansas, California, or Indiana, your community foundation or your regional associations are also running webinars. We'll continue to provide webinars and informational opportunities. Stay tuned. We'll get information out to you, and our website will maintain updates. So thank you. We look forward to your feedback about these revisions, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you all to the National Standards Board on the call, and everyone have a wonderful afternoon.